Percents and financial literacy. I'm going to talk about these things in terms of, well, BC mainly, because that's where I'm from in Canada, as most of you know. Because we're going to look at around the country, in our country, percent for taxes can be different depending on what province you're in. Depending on what country you're in, they can be different too around the world. So tax in BC can include both GST and PST. Can include. Doesn't necessarily have to, and we'll see how this kind of works. As of 2025, when this video is being recorded right now, the GST is 5% and the PST is 7%. This is directly from the government website, BC government. In some cases, provincial sales tax, PST, that's what it stands for, provincial sales tax, and GST stands for goods and sales tax, or goods and services tax, sorry. In some cases, the PST doesn't need to be paid on purchases or leases. The following exemptions are available to everyone and don't require any documentation. Food for human consumption, that's basic groceries and prepared food such as restaurant meals. Books, newspapers and magazines, children's size clothing, bicycles, and prescription medications and household medical aids such as cough syrup and pain medications. There are some exemptions in BC where you don't have to pay the PST, but the GST will still apply. So it's just some information. I'm probably going to have a project for this course that will kind of cover PST exemptions as well, just so it's a little more clear. But some things don't have PST, just so you know. But we're going to look at mainly for this lesson is value or things that do have PST. What is the cost of a remote control helicopter? So this is a good, like an item that you would purchase, a toy, which does of course have GST and PST, that is regularly priced at $160 if PST is 7% and GST is 5%. So there are three methods we can use. First, we're going to determine the taxes separately. So I'm going to start with my $160. We've seen this so many times when I have to, convert each one of these to a decimal by dividing by 100. So this one becomes 0.07. This one becomes 0.05. So I take my $160. I'm going to determine the taxes separately. These taxes are added on. So there's a couple of ways you could do this. You could, of course, multiply by 0.07, multiply by 0.05, then add them together. Or you could multiply by 1.07 to include the tax right away. So I start off with my 160, I multiply by 1.07, and that is, actually, you know what, I'm going to do this separately because we're just going to add on the tax, so we can see how much the taxes are. So I take 160, I'm multiplying by 0.07. You could do it the other way as well, and that's $11.20. Remember to always round to two decimal places for these types of money problems. And the second value is 160, and I'm multiplying by 0.05. And that, of course, is for the GST. So I start off with 160. I multiply by 0.05, and that is $8. And the cost of the remote, so we always go back to the question. Whenever you're dealing with word problems, go back to the question, what is it asking? What is the cost of a remote control helicopter? So what's the total cost? So what you're going to do for total cost is you're going to start off with my 160. I'm going to add on my $11.20, add on my $8, so I'm adding on all my tax. And that gets me to $179.20. Again, remember that you should be rounding to two decimal places. Now, this lesson, unlike the last lesson that we did, if you did watch that video, combining the taxes in this case for taxes is totally fine. You can do that. You can combine the taxes by adding the taxes together. So I can take the 7% and add on the 5% to make 12%. Because I'm not applying a discount. This is not like a discount that's going to be applied, right after the other. If you have 7% and 5% taxes on both taxes on the item, then of course you can combine the percents like this. So when I combine them then, I'm going to take $160, I'm going to multiply by 0.12, because that is 12%. You can multiply by 1.12 as well and get to the final answer. So 160 times by 0.12, which is 1920, $19.20. And of course, for my total cost, I would add those two values together to get $179.20. So it gets me to the same answer, just a little bit quicker. And I could go even faster by multiplying 160, right? Or we could take 160 multiplied by 1.12 right away, and that would get me to the answer. Now, that's what I'm going to show in part 3, is basically saying 160, this is the fastest way to do this question, multiplying by 1.12. So I've combined the cost because my 1 in front of my decimal place includes the original price. And I'm adding on my percent as well because I'm adding on the 0.12 by multiplying by it. And that will get me directly, we'll see, so 160 times 1.12 is 179.20. Okay, so definitely method 3 is the quicker way to do it if you have combined percents. If you have something that's PST exempt, then of course you wouldn't combine the percents, but you could still do this method here where you include the 1 in front of the decimal place to include the original price. Here's an example. Mr. Howell, it's me, likes to eat a lot of chips. I do. He knows that in Alberta, taxes are only 5%, which they are, with no additional PST. So it's 5% across the board. There is no PST. So me, goes to Alberta to purchase his large order of chips for $213. That's a lot of chips. How much do the chips cost him? So this is again just a cost question where you're starting with your original value. 5%, which means you're going to multiply. I'm going to do the quick method, which is adding the 1 in front to include the original, just because I'm being asked how much do the chips cost him. The question could also say, how much does he pay in taxes? If it says, how much does he pay in taxes, like how much or how many taxes, this is not properly English, but it could say something like this. Okay, if it says something like this, then you are only going to calculate the tax. And if you do that, you would definitely not include the 1 in front. You would take $213 and you would multiply by 0.05, for example. Okay, this time we are going to include the tax, or include the original price, because we're asked how much do the chips cost. So we're going to include the original price by putting a 1 in front of the decimal, and I'm going to calculate this directly. 213 times 1.05, which is 223.65. Whoops. $223.65. Okay, and we could see how much he would save. Like, hey, if this was in Canada, or if this was, Canada, if this was in BC, I would take my 213 and I would multiply by my 1.12 because there's more taxes. It's going to cost me, a little bit more. We could subtract this price, $233.65, to see how much more, $14.91. And if you've seen the second part of this question, what other factors does he have to consider? Well, if you've ever seen a map and you've seen how far Alberta is from BC, the amount of gas would cost me way more than the amount I'm saving. And as my wife pointed out, she said you might want to care about the amount of cholesterol, salt, your diet. So diet might be one thing to consider too when buying chips. However, I will still eat them because I like chips. So those are two things to consider. But that's how you add on the taxes. Okay, last example here. Percent discounts. So you can either calculate the percent discount first and then subtract from the cost, or, like we've seen in previous examples too, you can subtract the percent discount from 100 first and then calculate the cost. Okay, so we'll look at this question here. So Lucas, so we're going to do both methods. Lucas is in the market for a new gaming PC and finds one at Beat Buy Computer Shop. I wouldn't buy from here because they can't spell. The system comes with 256 gigabytes of RAM, which is ridiculous, and a 50 terabyte hard drive, which is massive. He has a coupon for 13% off the sale price, which is $3,050.99. That's expensive, but maybe not for this amount of RAM and terabyte hard drive. Of course, it doesn't tell you what kind of video card it comes with. There's lots of other factors, but that's fine. How much is this PC? So for the method 1, we're going to calculate the percent discount first and then subtract from the original cost. And I've shown this before, but it's okay to just to solidify this again. So $3,050.99. The coupon is for 13% off, which is not very much. So we convert that to a decimal, and I multiply. So 30.50.99 multiplied by 0.13 is 396. Of course, we round to 2 decimal places. So it's 396.63. And that's the amount of savings that he gets off with his coupon. If they have, most coupons are accessed through apps nowadays. And then what I do finally is I take the 3,050 and I subtract off my discount. Whoops, point. So 396.33. And then I get the sale price of this computer, which is 2654.66. 2654 and 66 cents. So the final sale price of this computer is $2,654.66 with his 13% off coupon. 13% doesn't sound like a lot, but however, when you're dealing with a large amount of money, it can be a decent discount. So method 2. What I do is I start, and this, I haven't really explained this perfectly, but I take 100%, I subtract off my 13%, which gets me 87%, and that will basically be 87% of the original price will be applying the discount. But it's applying the discount through the percent rather than applying the discount through subtraction of the amount of money. So it's a bit of a different way to think about it, but it still works. So I start with my $3,050.99, and this time I'm going to multiply by 0.87 because that's 87%. So I take 3050.99 times 0.87, which is 2654.36. Notice the amount is a little bit different because I rounded in the first one. Right, I rounded to 2 decimal places up here, whereas I'm not rounding at all here. I'm getting a very close answer, but they're a little bit different. So 2654.36. Now, if I was looking at these answers, I would say both are acceptable. This one, though, is more accurate. But both are acceptable. I would accept both answers. So if your answer is off slightly and you're using method 1, then just know that your answer is probably fine. It's just that because of rounding, it's going to be a little bit different. Or your answer here might be different too from the back. They may do this method 1 around. So, decent discount. Second part of this question, Lucas notices that BeatBuy offers an additional savings if you find the PC cheaper at another store. That's the BeatBuy computer store. He notices that at Lone Don Thugs, which I wouldn't go to either, at that store, they have the PC on sale for 5% less. So BeatBuy matches this by offering an additional 5% off the 13% sale price. So I'm starting with my 13%, I'm starting with my 13% sale price, which was, we're going to use the more accurate value, 2654.36, because if I use the more inaccurate value, the differences they'll compound on each other, which means my answer will be quite a bit different by the end. But again, it's okay. If your answer is off by $1, $2 maybe max, that's okay. That can be due to rounding. So what is the new cost of this PC? So I take 2,654.36. I'm going to multiply that, which was the sale price. Now 5% off from 100 is 95% of the original price. So I can take this price, multiply it by 0.95, which represents a 5% discount, because it's the more accurate way. 2654.36 multiplied by 95, or 0.95, is 2521.64. 0.64. So $2,521.64 for this PC that he gets more additional percent off by buying it from BeatBuy instead of Lone Don Thugs. So this is a good example of if you find a cheaper a price of an item at a store, some stores do offer price matching, and they will look at the coupon or they'll look at the price of the thing from Amazon or whatever item you're trying to buy, and they can, and some of them do, price match. So the actual store, Best Buy computers, you could probably go there, show them an advertisement if it's exactly the same item, and they can price match. This is a real world example. Hopefully that makes sense. A bit of a longer video, but yeah, lots to get through. Let me know if you have any questions.